There's a kind of silence in machinery that only those who've lived with it long enough can recognize. Not because the machine has stopped working, but because what's still running isn't running the way it used to. It's the sound of pretend stability, smooth on the outside but deep inside, misaligned rhythms, grinding tension, and cracks slowly building hour by hour. Landon Cross didn't hear that sound coming from an engine. He heard it from the empire his father left behind. Crossline Auto, the garage chain his father built from scratch back in the 1980s, had grown to 8 locations across Nevada. After his father passed, Landon turned down every offer to sell. He wanted to keep his father's machinery the way someone keeps an old heartbeat alive, just a few more beats for memory's sake. But something that spring started sounding wrong. It all began with a review, barely 20 words, posted on the Google page for the Southcrest branch. Smooth scam, but still a scam. Landon was no stranger to bad reviews. Anyone in the service business runs into picky customers. But the phrasing, it slipped past specifics. It wasn't a complaint. It felt like a whisper left behind by someone who knew no one was really listening. He spent the next 2 weeks combing through every 3-star or lower review from the past 6 months. Southcrest alone made up over 70%. He checked the numbers. Revenue? Solid. Efficiency? Decent. Warranty returns? Low. And that was what scared him most, when everything looked fine, but the soul of the place had already begun to rot. Southcrest was the only branch he had never visited since becoming CEO. The current manager, Mason Trigg, was hired after that. He'd never even met Landon outside of a blurry photo in the corporate training slides. And then Landon stumbled across an old file in his late father's garage, a 1998 Pontiac service contract, signed at the Southcrest location. Customer name, Elliot Nash. The name made Landon's spine tighten. He remembered it from a sudden resignation letter 2 months ago. He called Cassandra, his longtime assistant, told her no one in the company should know he was leaving HQ that week. Then he rang Jeremy, his old college buddy, and now a professional makeup artist in Los Angeles, the same guy who once helped him impersonate a pilot for a company anniversary video. "I need to become a mid-40s rookie mechanic," he said. Jeremy chuckled. "And no one can recognize you?" Now that's a fun challenge. 3 days later, Landon stared at the mirror. Salt and pepper hair, thick-rimmed glasses, a fake belly under a cheap grease-stained t-shirt, and a tiger tattoo coiled around his left arm. Temporary ink, but strikingly real. His chosen alias, Noah Rains, a field tech trainee sent from HQ for hands-on rotation. When he pushed open the heavy steel door of the Southcrest garage that Monday morning, motor oil and metal hammering greeted him. There was no welcome, just a blank stare from Mason Trigg. "New guy from corporate?" Mason asked, voice like dry gravel. "They letting suits get their hands dirty now?" Landon forced a wry smile. "You want to know how a system runs? You change the oil yourself." Mason shrugged. "Just don't slow the rest of us down." Then he walked off, not waiting for a reply. 7 mechanics were working. No one looked up. They moved like parts in a system. Automated, impersonal, no conversation. Only one of them, a young man around 22, had a single earbud in, oil smudged across his cheek, but a warm smile. Devin Hale. "Don't let Mason kill your vibe," Devin whispered as they worked on a brake job for an old Subaru. "He's been over it for a long time. One guy quit last week. Another blew out his knee." Landon asked quietly, "Why'd the other guy quit?" Devin glanced around before answering. Said he couldn't take it anymore. Said something was off. "I don't know the details. I just try to do my part." Over the next 2 days, Landon washed cars, changed oil, and deliberately worked slower than he was capable of. Just enough to avoid suspicion. But his eyes missed nothing. He watched how people moved, how they spoke, and more importantly, what they avoided. Devin was the only one who stayed late without complaining. He'd grab a sandwich and eat it standing up, wiping sweat with a grease rag. And Landon began noticing something strange. The youngest, least experienced guy on the team had the clearest sense of integrity. Then on the 3rd day, something happened. A woman in her 60s, Mrs. Walker, pulled in with an old Honda. scuffed rims, bald rear tires, but she still smiled gently. "I need 2 new tires," she said, her voice slightly shaky. "Just the back ones. I replaced the front in June." Mason took the keys without a word, tossed them to Tyler Voss, a hulking, tattooed tech with a permanent scowl. Landon watched as Tyler pulled 2 tires from the rack, but something didn't add up. The tire codes didn't match the ones on the invoice that had just been printed. Tyler mounted them onto Mrs. Walker's car, then rolled the used but still good tires into the corner of the shop. Then, he doubled back. He grabbed 2 high-performance tires, still wrapped in pristine plastic, and stashed them in the bed of his own pickup truck. Landon's gut twisted. He didn't act immediately. He waited. Once Tyler drove off, Landon slipped across the lot and checked the truck bed. The expensive tires were still there. That night at the motel, Landon sat on the edge of the bed, gripping a pillowcase. In the mirror, he didn't see Noah Raines anymore. He saw a man torn between 2 legacies. One, the business his father built, proud of its transparency. The other, what he had just witnessed, plain theft in broad daylight, and no one said a word. He knew he couldn't wait 3 more days as originally planned, but he couldn't reveal himself just yet either. He needed to know, was Mason in on it? Or worse, was he the one who'd given the green light? Landon made his choice. 1 more day. 1 more day to find out who was really steering this ship in the dark. Wednesday began with a faint shaft of light slipping under the half-open garage door. Landon had arrived early. Too early. He had a reason. He wanted to know who truly ran the mornings, not on paper, but by presence. Mason Trigg entered the shop at 6:57 a.m., 3 minutes before clock-in. In one hand, an off-brand paper coffee cup. In the other, his ever-present clipboard. No greeting, no shared glance. Just his arrival, more like a door shutting than one opening. Landon, as Noah Raines, was wiping down tools from the day before. He nodded a quiet hello. Mason paused half a second, gave him a head-to-toe scan, then barked out, without lowering his voice, "Wipe your hands before touching gear. I don't run HQ, but here. No one ruins tools without hearing about it." Landon pressed his lips together. Part of him wanted to snap back. Another part found it oddly revealing. Mason didn't need to know who he was to assert dominance. That kind of authority came from time, or worse, from a culture that never asked where the line should be. Landon moved into the main floor as the other techs began filtering in. Devin was the first. Worn t-shirt, hair uncombed, but eyes sharp and clear. He had one earbud in, a greasy toolbox in hand. And when he spotted Noah, he grinned and said, "You beat me again. I'm about to lose my title as first one in." A flicker of humor, just enough to cut through the cold steel and smog. The shop gradually buzzed to life, not with chatter, but with engines, impact wrenches, hydraulic lifts. No one spoke much. Each person was their own station. Glances occasionally passed between them, not out of connection, but as if checking on each other, or dodging something no one dared name. Landon started the shift as usual, today helping change spark plugs on an old Jeep. Devin was lead tech. Noah was support. As they leaned over the engine, Devin muttered, "This job needs 2 proper techs at least." Mason knows it. Still pushed another car in. Landon asked quietly, "Why not tell him?" Devin shrugged. "He doesn't listen. And around here, listeners get laid off faster than the silent ones." It wasn't the first time Landon had heard that kind of remark, but this time it hit differently. Not resignation, but a kind of weathered clarity, spoken by someone who had tried and been worn down for it. Lunch break. A few workers gathered in the back corner of the supply room. What used to be a break room, now just a long bench and a half-functioning water cooler. Landon poured himself coffee from a stained thermos. He knew it was stale. Devin didn't drink, just wiped his hands in silence. Next to him sat an older man, Leo Ramos, graying hair, stooped posture. His name had once appeared on a commendation plaque signed by Landon's father. Leo rarely spoke, but this time when Landon sat beside him, Leo spoke up, without turning. "Here, the quiet ones get to stay." Landon waited. Leo continued. I reported misordered parts 3 times. After the third, no one asked me again. I'm still here. I just don't talk anymore. He looked toward a repair sheet pinned on the wall. The oil quantity on it, always listed about 10% higher than what actually went in. Landon said nothing, but something inside him cracked. That afternoon, Landon followed Devin into the back storage area to find an air filter for a 2010 Camry. The right one wasn't there. Been out since last week, Devin mumbled. Mason said just install something close. If the customer can't tell, it's fine. Landon asked, and if they notice? Devin shrugged again. We call it a technical mix-up. No one gets docked. Just the guy on the wrench gets yelled at. That night, Landon wrote it all down. In a small leather notebook, no labels. The same one where his father once penned, "True ethics show when no one's watching." Landon stared up at the motel ceiling, and he finally understood. This wasn't just about Tyler or Mason. It was about a system that had learned how to stay silent to survive. Tomorrow he would no longer be just the one listening. That afternoon, the sky above Southcrest garage turned a heavy shade of gray, as if the city had been holding its breath all morning and only now dared to let it out. Landon was rinsing down the back lot of the car wash area when he heard the uneven rattle of an old engine pull into the front driveway. A silver-gray Honda Civic rolled to a stop at the main entrance. The hood was slightly misaligned, the rear door had a dent, and a dull film of dust clung to the wheel wells. The woman who stepped out was in her 60s, small but sturdy. Her silver hair was twisted into a clip at the back of her head. She tugged her coat higher around her neck, then glanced around. "Excuse me," she called toward the door. "I need 2 rear tires. Slid through a whole curve yesterday." Mason stepped out from inside. No smile, no reassurance. Just words. "Let me get the car info. Wait inside." No greeting, no warmth. Landon, standing a few yards away, felt something colder than the outside air. The rear right tire was worn to the cords, with a long scrape down one side, likely from the spin Mrs. Walker had just described. Landon looked closer. That mark wasn't just from a random bump. It was the quiet trace of long neglected maintenance. He didn't blame her. Not everyone knows how to read a tire's history, but a mechanic should know, and a manager should care enough to say something. Mason handed the Civic over to Tyler Voss, the bulky, heavily tattooed tech who looked at the world like it was a test he had no patience for. Tyler gave the car a glance and spat on the shop floor. "Tires are shot. I got it." Landon stepped in to assist, partly for his cover as a trainee, but mostly because he wanted to see everything with his own eyes. Tyler headed to the back inventory, where tires were sorted by code: standard, performance, used, and a special shelf for high-value orders, reserved for customer-specific or high-end models. He pulled 2 tires, but Landon immediately noticed the issue. The codes didn't match. The tires Tyler chose were from the cheapest category, but Mrs. Walker had been quoted for a mid-tier package: higher quality, slightly more expensive, better safety. Tyler didn't hesitate. He mounted the cheap tires on her Civic, then rolled the 2 old ones, still usable under specific conditions, into the recycled tire area. But then he circled back. Not to grab another tool, but to approach the performance tire section. Landon kept watching. Tyler selected 2 brand new Michelin Pilot Sports, top-tier tires typically reserved for sports cars or VIP clients. He wrapped them in plastic and loaded them into the bed of his pickup truck, which had been parked out back since early afternoon. No one asked. No one checked. This wasn't a mistake. This was a move made with the confidence that no one was paying attention. Landon's heart raced, not from fear, but from the visceral sense that he'd just touched the center of something deeply wrong. The rest of the day passed like any other. Tyler left earlier than usual, waved at a few coworkers, and walked out back like a man finishing a normal shift. Landon quietly washed his hands, dried them, then stepped outside. He circled around the side lot to the back, where Tyler's gray pickup sat, backed up to the rusted chain-link fence. No one else was there. The tires were still in the bed, wrapped and pristine. That type of tire didn't appear on any work order that day. Landon knew because he'd checked them all. He snapped photos, wrote down the license plate, logged the time, and said nothing to anyone. That night, Landon returned to his motel. He opened his laptop, but didn't type a word. Instead, he pulled out the leather notebook where he recorded the same principles his father once lived by. He flipped to a page marked with an old phrase: "A machine doesn't fail because it runs out of oil. It fails when no one checks the oil anymore." He drew a thick line underneath. For the first time since this undercover job began, Landon couldn't sleep. The next morning, Landon arrived at the garage even earlier than usual. The air was still thick with mist, cold slipping through every rusted door seam. But there was something different now, a look in his eyes that only those who've lost sleep out of anger would recognize. He wasn't watching anymore. He was waiting. He held a rag in one hand, pretending to wipe down a tool shelf in the corner. The one that gave him a clear view of the coffee station, the job board, and the warehouse entrance out back, concealed enough to be unnoticed, close enough to hear everything. 7:18 a.m. Tyler Voss entered the shop, his heavy gait and cocky swagger no different from any other day. He smacked Mason Trigg lightly on the shoulder. Mason was standing at the schedule board. "Sold 2 Pilot Sports last night," Tyler said with a smug grin. "Easy cash." Mason didn't turn around immediately. He sipped his coffee, smacked his lips, then replied casually, like it was just small talk. "As long as nobody sees, we're good." Tyler laughed louder. "I ain't stupid. Everyone in here's blind." Mason gave him a pat on the back. "Good. Just keep your mouth shut. You know there aren't any cameras around here." Landon froze, not because he was shocked. He'd already suspected this, but because of how casually they joked about stealing, like it was a daily part of shop culture. The calmness in their voices made his skin crawl. Mason wasn't just aware, he was complicit. Maybe he wasn't the one loading tires into the truck, but he was flipping the switch. He was the green light, the laugh track, the reason everyone else stayed silent. As soon as Tyler stepped away, Landon put down the rag and walked over to Devin, who was checking tire pressure on a GMC. "Devin," he said quietly, "I need to ask you something, not as a trainee." Devin looked up, pulled out one earbud. His eyes were wary. "Have you ever seen anyone take tires without logging an invoice?" Devin hesitated. "You mean, like for a friend?" "I mean to resell, not because we're short on stock, because they want a profit." Devin glanced around, then pulled Landon behind the truck. His voice dropped. "Saw Tyler do that 3 weeks ago. Wrapped the tires, loaded them into his truck. I told Mason." Landon nodded. "What did he say?" "Told me I was overthinking it, then moved me to undercarriage work. Less access to storage." Devin let out a dry laugh. "I got better at not overthinking after that." Landon placed a hand on Devin's shoulder. Part thank you, part apology. Back in his makeshift office, just an old storage nook cleaned out for appearance. Landon unlocked his phone and called Martin Graves, the regional operations director. Martin had once worked with him on the Northside branch overhaul last year. "Martin here." "It's Landon. I need you down at Southcrest." There was a pause. "I thought you were back at HQ." "I never left the job," Landon replied, voice low. "But right now I'm at Southcrest, undercover, and I just heard 2 employees talk about theft like it's a workplace perk." Another pause. "I'll be there this afternoon. You want this public or private?" "Private for now, but bring everything: invoices, inventory records, surveillance status, and every custom tire order from the last 3 months." "How big do you think this is?" Landon stared out the grimy window. "I think this isn't just 2 guys. I think we've let neglect take a seat at the leadership table without even noticing." Martin exhaled audibly. "I'll be there. And I'm not bringing a time card. I'm bringing a checklist." Landon hung up. He looked across the lot. Tyler was laughing at his own joke while changing oil with another tech. No one suspected. No one was alert. And that was exactly why everyone was about to be caught off guard. That afternoon, the sun hung midway over the tin roof, casting a harsh beam across the concrete floor of Southcrest Garage. But the heat outside was nothing compared to what was about to break inside. Landon stood in front of the mirror in the rear restroom, a place no trainee like Noah Raines would ever be seen. He straightened the collar of his navy polo. The cross-line auto logo sat crisp on his chest, with white embroidery below. Landon Cross. No more graying hair, no thick glasses, no wrinkled shirt or fake tattoos. He wore clean black shoes, fitted khakis, and eyes that no longer dodged the truth. They were waiting for the moment it would finally be faced. He exited through the side door, walking past the repair bays where, for nearly a week, he had knelt, unscrewed bolts, and changed oil like a nameless worker. Tyler was joking by the red pickup. Mason stood nearby, clipboard still in hand. Neither noticed him. At first, but Devin did. He froze mid-motion. A screwdriver slipped from his hand and hit the floor with a ting that sounded like a quiet but unmistakable alarm. Mason turned, ready to scold, and stopped cold. He stared at the man approaching, a walk he vaguely recognized, a face too familiar, now too different. You're Landon Cross, he said. We need to talk. Right now. No yelling, no overturned desks, but the shift in power was deafening. Mason froze, trying to keep his voice steady. I didn't know you were here. I thought... Exactly. You thought I was a trainee. That's why I was here. Landon gestured. They walked into the office. The door shut behind them. Inside, dim lighting, paperwork scattered. A motivational poster faded on the wall. Leadership is earned, not given. Landon met Mason's eyes. I've been here all week, as Noah reigns. I've seen how you manage. I've seen Tyler steal, and this morning I heard you laugh about it. Mason stammered. That's not how it was. I have audio. I have photos of the tires in his truck. I have Devin's statement. You can stay silent, but you can't stay here another minute. Mason slammed the clipboard on the desk. You're not even giving me a chance to explain? You had your chance. When Devin spoke up, when tires went missing the first time, when Mrs. Walker left thinking her car was safe. You chose silence, and silence isn't neutral. It's complicity. Mason's face turned pale. He stood abruptly, but Landon didn't move. Pack your things. Security will escort you out. I've called Martin Graves. You know him, don't you? Mason swallowed. You don't have to do this. I do, because this place has been broken for too long. Mason left the room a shell, no longer the cold, confident overseer, but a relic of a system that looked the other way for too long. Landon didn't pause. He headed straight for Bay 3, where Tyler was checking an engine, one earbud dangling. Put the tools down, Landon said. Right now. Tyler turned, brows raised. Who the hell are you? I'm Landon Cross. I own this place, and I know what you've done. Tyler smirked. I didn't do anything wrong. You've got no proof. I do. I saw you take the tires. I heard you brag about it to Mason. I have the photos, and I'll send them to the police if I need to. The bulky mechanic stood frozen for a moment, then slowly pulled out his earbud, wiped his hands on a rag. You think I'm the first one to do this here? No, Landon replied, gaze steady. But if I do my job right, you'll be the last. Tyler looked around. Everyone had stopped. No one said a word, but everyone heard. Devin, Leo, even Skylar, the new hire from earlier in the week. Landon turned to face the crew. Everyone, take 10. Meet me by the break table. He didn't have to call twice. They followed quietly, heavily. The air wasn't thick with oil. It was thick with something heavier, a recalibration of trust. Landon stood in the break room, once a dingy lunch corner, now the site of a quiet rebuild. I came here as a trainee, not to test your skills, but to see what the data couldn't tell me. I saw the silence, the fatigue, and the courage, like Devin's, that tried to speak but wasn't heard. He scanned the room. His voice wasn't loud, but it cut clean. Starting today, this will no longer be a place where silence keeps your job. This will be a place where doing the right thing lets you stand tall. He paused. And if that doesn't work for anyone, there's the door. No one stood up. No one left. Landon knew for the first time in a long time, Southcrest was learning how to breathe again. The next morning, Southcrest garage no longer echoed with whispered doubts hiding beneath the noise of machines. It was no longer the kind of place where Tyler lounged with his feet up until closing, or where Mason walked around like an uncrowned king. After the reveal, the entire shop felt like a machine restarted after overheating. There was still noise, but it was the sound of anticipation, not fear. Landon arrived early, very early. No dress shirt, no tie. Just a charcoal gray cross-line auto t-shirt, jeans, and a pair of gloves tucked in his back pocket. He sat in the office, now cleared out, cleaned, and bearing a paper sign taped to the door. Temporary HQ, Landon Cross. Not gold-plated, not acrylic, just printed ink and scotch tape. But everyone who saw it knew. Temporary, yes, but present and ready to listen. 8 a.m. The full crew gathered. Not by order, by invitation. Devin stood near the water cooler. Leo leaned against the wall. Manuel rubbed his thumb joint, aching again. Skylar, the new hire, wasn't there yet. But moments later the door opened. She stepped in, small frame, baseball cap pulled low. Jacket still carried the faint scent of storage. In her left hand, a toolbox. The kind you bring when you're not sure if you'll be allowed to stay. She walked in just as Landon began to speak. I won't take much of your time. I just have a few things to say. Not as the owner, but as someone who got it wrong. The room fell still. I wasn't here when this place started to crack. I let polished reports hide fractured walls, and I made people like Devin, like Leo, feel alone for doing the right thing. That won't happen again. Devin lowered his head. Leo looked away. Manuel closed his eyes. Landon continued. Yesterday ended an old chapter. Today starts a new one, not with slogans, but with actual change. First, I've spoken to HR. We'll be hiring at least 2 new techs within the next 10 days. Not to boost productivity, but to ease the pressure. A few eyes lifted. Second, I'm ordering a full inventory audit. Any mismatched stock codes will be corrected. No one here should have to install wrong parts because the system failed them. Manuel nodded softly. Third, and most importantly, starting today, the new lead tech at Southcrest is Devin Hale. Devin froze. So did the rest of the room. Landon turned to him. Devin, you did what very few are willing to do. You spoke up, not for a promotion, but for the job, for your team. I don't need someone flawless. I need someone who speaks when it matters, corrects when it's wrong, and stands up for the new ones. Devin stammered. I've never been a lead before. Landon smiled. You've been leading. You just didn't have the title. Now you do. Leo chuckled out loud. Manuel clapped Devin on the back. For the first time, the room filled with laughter. Genuine laughter. Just then, a voice called from the doorway. Sorry, I just got here. All heads turned. Skylar Nguyen, the only one in the room with eyes that reminded Landon of his mother. Dark, deep, watchful. I'm Skylar, she said softly. I got the call yesterday. Landon nodded. We need people like you. She stepped in, but not everyone welcomed her. One person stayed silent. Brett, a veteran tech once praised by Mason for being fast with his hands, faster with his mouth. He stood with arms crossed, eyes half challenging, half amused. As Skylar bent to set down her toolbox, Brett muttered just loud enough, What's next? We get someone in to do nails. No one laughed, but no one responded. Skylar heard it. Her lips tightened. She didn't look up. Devin looked at Landon. Landon didn't speak, but his eyes said everything, noted, and not forgotten. The meeting moved on. Starting today, Landon said, you all have the right to make suggestions. On paper, in person, or simply by refusing to stay quiet when something's wrong. He paused. Southcrest isn't a broken place waiting for a rebrand. It's a system, and that system deserves to be repaired, not punished. For the first time, Skylar looked up, and Landon saw it, a flicker of belief beginning to form in her eyes. Skylar Nguyen's first morning at Southcrest didn't start with coffee. It didn't start with clear instructions either. It started with a jab. Careful, Brett said as she was inspecting the hydraulic brake lines on a 2016 Tacoma. Wouldn't want to break a nail. This ain't a nail salon. The comment, short as it was, dropped onto the garage floor like a rock into a cracked pond. No ripple, just impact. No one said anything, but Skylar heard every word, and Landon didn't miss it. She didn't look up. She simply tightened the bolts, then adjusted the torque with calm precision. No waste, no error. Landon walked up, standing just behind Brett. "What did you say just now?" Brett turned around, face nonchalant, like nothing had happened. "Just joking. That's how we mess around here." "That joke wasn't funny," Landon said, voice low and steady. "And around here, we don't trade dignity for laughs." Brett squinted. "What, now you're giving TED Talks too? I've been here 7 years. She's been here one day." "And you're leaving today," Landon replied. "Right now." The entire garage went still, not from shock, but because a line had just been drawn. "Wait," Brett scoffed. "You're firing me over a joke?" "No," Landon said. "I'm firing you because you represent exactly what drives good people out and lets the wrong ones stay." Brett didn't argue. He threw his gloves to the floor, muttered a curse, and walked out without looking back. Skylar still didn't lift her head. She double-checked her work, signed the repair sheet in clean, steady handwriting, and underlined, "Recheck in 200 miles. Recommend customer returns." Devin walked over. "You okay?" Skylar gave a small nod. "I don't need anyone to defend me. I just want to do the job right." Devin smiled softly. "I think finally this is a place you can do that." That day, Skylar completed 3 service jobs: a faulty gearbox, a misaligned suspension system, and a coolant replacement with a slow leak. Each time, no assistance, no supervision. But during the last one, Landon stood nearby, not to check on her work, but to recognize the value others had ignored. When she tightened the final clamp on the cooling system, Landon stepped forward and handed her a bottle of water. "Nice job." She took it silently, but her eyes softened. That afternoon, the team gathered briefly before close. "We lost someone today," Landon began, "and that's a good thing." Silence. "Not because we want to lose people, but because we want to keep values. If anyone here feels belittled, mocked, or shut out just because they're not part of the old guard, then we're heading in the wrong direction." He looked over at Skylar. "You don't need to prove anything else. You've done more than enough." She nodded. Devin added, "We used to accept things. Not anymore. If someone new walks in and does the job right, they deserve our trust. Not a year from now, but right from the start." Leo gave a subtle nod. Manuel patted Skylar lightly on the arm. No speeches, no applause, but none of it was needed. Southcrest had found a new rhythm. No shouting, no banners. Just the right people, doing the right work. And sometimes, as Skylar had just proved, the quietest act done right is the strongest stand of all. Yara Collins didn't knock. She didn't need to. The rear door of the Southcrest garage swung open just as Devin was jotting down a parts number for a Ford Expedition. A woman stepped in, hair pulled back tight, pale gray button-up shirt, clipboard in hand with no name on it. No one asked who she was. No one dared. But when her eyes scanned across the service bays and landed squarely on Skylar, who was checking tire pressure on a pickup, people started to understand. This wasn't a customer. This was someone who came to see without needing to ask. Landon stepped out of the office, hands still smudged with grease. He wasn't surprised. He'd called Yara himself, but he still braced for it. Because Yara didn't come to confirm suspicions. She came to dig up what others had buried. "Shall we begin?" she asked. He nodded. They walked into the tech room, formerly Mason's office. The paperwork was cleared out, but the faint odor of cigarette smoke still clung to the old drapes. Yara opened a folder. "Payroll March through July," she said. "Overtime spikes, but no matching work orders logged in the system." Landon said nothing. "Tire inventory, 3 shipments unaccounted for, each worth over $1,200. No invoices, no warranty notes." She paused, flipped a page, and looked up. "Elliot Nash." Landon's head lifted. "You know that name," Yara said confidently. "I found it in the HR logs. Quit suddenly last year, right around the time an internal memo about inventory process revisions at Southcrest was issued, signed by Mason." Landon remained silent. His fingers tapped lightly on the desk edge. "Devin," he said, "bring him in." Devin entered, a bit uneasy. You mentioned Elliot once. Devin nodded. He was the one who trained me when I started. Sharp guy, but stubborn. What do you mean? Landon asked. He used to say, we're just tools for pushing profit. If you screw up and save money doing it, you still get praised. Devin paused. He didn't think anyone was really listening. Once he reported a brake pad error due to faulty inventory. Mason called him in. After that, Elliot went quiet. Then he quit. Yara scribbled notes. Anyone else ever talk about Nash? Devin shook his head. No one dared. He was like a shadow. Knew too much. Made people nervous. When Devin left, Landon stayed quiet. Yara watched him. What are you thinking? Landon exhaled. I used to believe the system could fix itself, that the rot was surface level. But now, I'm wondering if my father laid the groundwork for all of this. You mean Mr. Cross? Landon nodded slowly. He taught me integrity, but he also told me, sometimes you close your eyes to keep the cash flowing. I don't know which of those lessons was the real one, and I don't know how much he didn't see, because he didn't want to. Yara didn't offer comfort. She just said, I'll find Elliot. He may not want to talk, but if there's anything worth hearing, I'll be the first to hear it. That afternoon, Landon stood alone in the back lot. He looked toward the chain-link fence, the same fence where he once saw Tyler stash stolen tires. But this time, he wasn't looking to uncover. He was looking to understand. If this system was broken from the start, then what part of it is still worth saving? And what part needs to be torn down? A question only he could answer. But one thing he knew with certainty. From this point forward, silence was no longer an option. Thursday afternoon. The rain came thin and quiet. Droplets clung to the office window panes, pulling old dust into long, murky streaks, as if Southcrest garage itself was trying to wash off something that had been rooted too deep for too long. Landon sat in the former tech office, reworking the schedule for next week, when the door opened. A woman stepped in. She wore a faded denim jacket, hair tied back, no makeup, but her eyes were clear and steady. In her hand was a small paper bag with the edge of a plastic lunch container and a stainless steel thermos peeking out. Sorry, she said. I'm looking for Devin Hale. Landon stood. He's out in the shop. Can I help you? She hesitated. I'm his sister. My name's Maya. Devin doesn't know I'm here. I just wanted to see. That's all. I don't need to talk to him. Landon studied the woman. She wasn't asking for a greeting. She wasn't asserting a right to be welcomed. She was simply someone who had worried about her brother. He nodded. Follow me. They walked across the shop floor in silence. Maya didn't speak. Her eyes moved carefully. Past Skylar, tightening bolts on an air compressor. Past Leo, coaching a younger tech on how to grease a ball joint. And finally, her gaze stopped. Devin stood at Bay 4, securing the radiator cap on a white SUV. His shirt was damp with sweat, his focus sharp, calm, present, unafraid. Maya froze. He's okay, she whispered, mostly to herself. Landon turned. You were worried? She nodded. A year ago, every time he came home, Devin would sit in his car for 20 minutes before coming inside. He never said a word, never complained, but his eyes, they were empty. I thought he was going to quit. The job, the city, maybe even himself. Landon said nothing. Maya looked at him, really looked for the first time. Last week he called me, said just one sentence. Sis, I think something's changing. She exhaled. I had to see for myself. At that moment, Devin looked up and saw her. He froze for a beat, then smiled. Small, but real. You really came? Maya walked over. No hug, no tears, just held out the paper bag. Leftover lunch from yesterday. Figured no one around here knows how to cook properly. Devin chuckled. Thanks, Maya. She gave his shoulder a light tap. Hold on to this place, okay? Because this place just held on to you. As Maya left, Landon didn't call after her, but he stood there for a long time. Devin turned to him. You know what the saddest thing is? He asked. What? It's not doing a job you hate. It's doing a job you love in a place that makes you want to quit. Landon nodded. That sentence didn't scream, but it weighed more than any quarterly loss report he'd ever read. Devin went on. There were days I didn't need a raise, didn't need a title. I just wanted to be myself, without armor, without fear, without waiting to be labeled. Landon didn't reply. He simply looked into Devin's eyes, and in that moment he realized the rarest currency in his father's company wasn't profit. It was the quiet freedom of small people, being allowed to exist without needing to prove they deserve to. As CEO, Landon had forgotten that. He once believed the strong always rise. Now he knew only the lucky survive in systems built to grind you down. That night, long after Southcrest had closed its bay doors, Landon stayed behind. He pulled out a whiteboard, picked up a black marker, and wrote, "If someone ever thought about leaving, make them regret not staying." He propped the board at the front entrance. Tomorrow, everyone would see it. Andre arrived at 7:12 a.m., 3 minutes after Skylar, 2 minutes before Leo. He didn't say much. Military standard toolbox in hand, olive jacket worn thin by years, and heavy boots that announced his presence before he did. Nobody asked where he came from. Men like Andre don't walk into a place unless they're already sure they belong. Landon greeted him with a handshake. Firm, no small talk. "Welcome to Southcrest." "Glad to be here," Andre replied. His tone was direct, not cold, just no use for pleasantries. Devin gave him the tour, the bays, the intake system, the shift board, and the new rule of the floor. "There's no culture of silence here. You're allowed to ask, and no one gets looked down on for being new or different." Andre nodded. "Understood." By the end of the day, he had completed 3 tasks: full brake replacement on a CRV, repaired a broken battery terminal on a Ford pickup, diagnosed a faulty airbag sensor on an import. The same car Brett once dismissed as unfixable. No complaints, no bragging, no wasted words. That evening, Landon sat down with Yara Collins behind closed doors. "We've done audits in pieces," he began. "I want the full 6 months, company-wide, everything. Supply chain, parts, performance spreadsheets, profit margins by location." Yara opened her laptop. "What are you looking for?" Landon exhaled. "Not someone to blame. I'm looking for what can be fixed." Yara paused, studied him longer than usual. "How big do you think this problem is?" Landon leaned back. "I used to think it was just a few bad employees. Then I thought, maybe a weak supervisor. Then Mason. Then Elliot. Now I think," he paused, "maybe the business model my father built, that's what needs to change." Yara didn't argue. She waited. "He designed the system for speed, high turnover, customer in, diagnose, outside. Every car under 2 hours. Every tech, 6 jobs a day. It was all optimized." He looked down. "But what we forgot is that people don't optimize like machines." Yara tapped a few keys. "And what do you want to do?" "Rebuild it. Slower, but cleaner. Smaller, but solid." She didn't blink. "You willing to pay for that?" Landon nodded. "I don't have a choice anymore." The next morning, a new message appeared on the shift board, pinned just above the job queue. "Performance isn't measured by speed, it's measured by the honesty behind every turn of the wrench." Devin read it out loud, then turned to Andre. "Your pace yesterday was slower than Brett's, but you didn't miss a single detail." Andre simply said, "Fast kills people. I've lost friends to shortcuts." Skylar heard it. She smiled. "This place, it's starting to breathe." From across the shop, Landon saw it too. The rhythm was shifting, quietly, but unmistakably. And deep inside, he knew. This wasn't just about changing people. This was about changing the very system his family once took pride in. That afternoon, long after the last car pulled out and the bays went quiet, Landon returned to the office. On the wall still hung an old photo. His father, Mr. Cross, holding a tire aloft in front of the first 3 branches. Beneath it, the original company motto, "Faster, cleaner, more profitable." Landon reached up and took it down. Tomorrow he would pin up a new one, not to decorate the wall, but to start over. 3 cars, 3 repair shifts, 3 different challenges. And Skylar Nguyen didn't miss a thing. The first was a Jeep Grand Cherokee. The steering felt loose but showed no diagnostic error. Skylar found the root. The drive shaft had a 2 mm misalignment caused by aging rubber dampers. She replaced the exact component. No guesswork, no overkill. The second was a 2019 imported Volvo, airbag fault code flashing. She checked each sensor, one by one, and pinpointed a grounding wire leak. She fixed it using cold soldering technique, a repair that former techs had claimed needed to be sent back to the manufacturer. The third was a Ford F-150 with a strange whining noise from the transmission. She took it as the final shift of the day, working alone. Identified the sound as a loose transmission bearing, a rare fault that, if ignored, would have cracked the shaft within 3 weeks. No one supervised. No one assisted. Only Devin standing a few paces behind, clipboard in hand, watching with growing clarity. He didn't need to defend Skylar anymore. She was now indispensable. After she finished the final job, Devin walked over. "Skylar," she turned, the same cautious expression, always alert. Devin spoke slowly. "You're the new standard here." Skylar raised an eyebrow. "I'm just doing it right." "Exactly." That sentence traveled through the shop. No fireworks, no speech. But it carried more weight than any time card or slogan that had ever been pinned up at Southcrest. From the back, Landon heard everything. And in that moment, he knew. The time had come. 1 week later, the new operating model for Crossline Auto was made official. Not via headquarters, not through a press release, but written by hand, in blue ink, bulleted and laminated, pasted at every break room and service bay across the shop. Southcrest 2.0. No more supervisors who don't understand the tools they manage. Every technician has the right to propose, verify, and refuse if technical conditions aren't met. Every shift will have a rotating lead, assigned by skill, not seniority, monthly quality challenges. No cash prizes, only names recorded under standard keepers. Mistakes are not punished. Hiding them is. Andre read the sign aloud during break. "Sounds like the Army, but the kind of army people want to join." Leo nodded. "First time I've seen a system that wasn't built just for the people who wrote it." Skylar said nothing, but she was already showing a new tech, a red-headed kid named Mason Jr., how to properly run a full electrical inspection. No one judged the name. No one made assumptions. This time, no one laughed. Landon stood off to the side. His gaze wasn't that of a CEO managing a company anymore. It was the look of someone learning how to believe again in the people on the front line. He knew no one here would be left behind, but no one would be allowed to stand still either. Southcrest was no longer a place where power lived at the top. It was where standards lived and were passed from one to another. That night, Landon wrote a single line in his notebook. Not for anyone else to see, just for himself. So he'd never forget. The one who upholds the standard doesn't need a title. They only need to be trusted. Monday morning, no internal memo, no team meeting, no farewell banner. But for the first time in years, Southcrest opened with a brand new kind of silence. Not tension, but ease. 7:03 a.m. Devin stood before the digital job board. To the left, Skylar's assignment. To the right, Andre's checklist. In the center, 3 unclaimed jobs. He turned. "Skylar, you've got the Honda. Andre, take the Chevy pickup. I'll handle the last one." No one argued. No one needed reminders. 8:15 a.m. The coffee machine in the corner was already humming. No one saw who turned it on. Maybe it was Leo. Maybe Manuel, recently back after 2 weeks of knee therapy. He wasn't doing full shifts anymore, but still dropped by to help out in the mornings. Landon entered through the side door. No name badge, no tablet, just a man with a gaze quieter than the day before. Devin saw him first. "You beat me in again." "Last time," Landon smiled. "What's today? Something special?" "It's my last day here." Devin paused, his posture tightening slightly. "You heading back to HQ?" Landon nodded. "There are other places that need rebuilding too." Devin stood quiet for a few moments. "I'm not sure I'm ready." "You've been doing it for weeks," Landon said. his tone as steady as a handshake. You don't need a title to lead. You just need to keep doing what you've already done. Look, listen, hold the standard. Devin exhaled, but didn't object. Landon walked through the shop bay by bay. Skylar didn't look up, but she lifted a hand in quiet farewell as he passed. Leo nodded from the tool bench. Andre was tightening a radiator cap, but tapped his wrench gently on the frame rail, like a salute. At the time clock, Landon picked up a black marker and wrote in slow, deliberate strokes, "Values don't fade when everyone holds the line." No one asked what it meant, because they all understood. Landon didn't throw a party. He didn't send a farewell email. No one cried. But as he walked away, the bay doors remained open, not to see him off, but to welcome another ordinary workday. And that was the most extraordinary part of all, because for the first time in years, Southcrest was no longer running because someone was watching. It was running because everyone had found their reason to stand beside one another. Not out of fear, not for a bonus, but to hold on to themselves. Inside a job they had once nearly let go. Sometimes all it takes is one person who refuses to look away for a broken system to begin healing. Landon didn't just expose a thief, he restored something far more important: dignity, trust, and the belief that doing the right thing still matters. If this story moved you, if it reminded you of someone who showed up, stood up, or spoke up when no one else did, leave a comment. Tell us your story, because the more we share, the less we stay silent. And if you believe the world needs more stories like this, of quiet courage, accountability, and second chances, hit that subscribe button and like this video. It's free, but it helps bring more light where it's long been dark.